We just go around the table in the audience to introduce ourselves. I'll start. I'm Jordan Hess, City Council.
Don MacArthur, Missoula Urban Transportation District.
Dudley Improda, Planning Board.
Colaroli, County Commissioner, proxy for Dave Strohmeyer or Gene Curtis.
Shane Stack, MDT, proxy for Ed Taves.
I'm Debbie Johnston. I'm the representative from the Missoula City County Health Board.
Okay, thank you. So we have minutes from July 17th. I'd entertain a motion to approve or amend those. Jane.
I'd move to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion is in order and it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or public comment? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Is there public comment on items not on our agenda? Okay. So we have a few items of new business. The first is amendment number 2 to the Long Range Transportation Plan, addressing federally required elements to system performance reporting. And I'll just note for the record that Aaron Wilson approached me about this amendment, which is a fairly routine required amendment, and waiving our standard 30-day public notification period. This was still notified or noticed for a fairly substantial period of time, but it did not meet the 30 days. So, Aaron.
Thanks. So, yeah, as Jordan mentioned, this is really a routine administrative amendment to the Long Range Transportation Plan, and one of the reasons we wanted to waive the 30-day notice period and not wait until next month to bring this amendment is that we were notified that we need to have this in the Long Range Transportation Plan addressing the performance measures and targets before we adopted our UPWP, I believe, and the TIP. So this is a requirement through the MAP 21 and the FAST Act. So we've been bringing various items over the last year or two related to performance measures and those related targets that MDT set for safety, bridge, pavement condition, congestion mitigation, and air quality, and various other performance measures. And we have, at the MPO, have agreed to support those targets rather than set our own. And so that we did that back in May, I believe. So essentially this amendment is going through some of that background for the long range plan. When we adopted it back in 2016, there wasn't yet a requirement to have this be part of the long range plan. We did start to talk about the performance measures and targets, but didn't have any of those established yet. So what we've done in this appendix is talk a little bit about the background, the legislation that's requiring these performance measures, what those performance measures are. We talk a little bit about the targets and the target setting process, and working with MDT to establish those statewide targets, how they relate to the national performance measures, the state measures, and then talk a little bit about what those actual statewide targets are. Since these are fairly new, we haven't been able to do a whole lot of data analysis and trend monitoring since they've been adopted. So we've essentially stated what those targets are, and that we would support the statewide targets. And then in the next long range plan update, we will continue to build on this, make it more a part of the actual long range transportation plan and talk about those targets and how the MPO is supporting those. So looking at those measures locally and how we're improving those and supporting the state targets. So essentially it's a pretty straightforward amendment, getting it into the long range plan, acknowledging that this is what we're doing, and then noting that we will continue to report on this and build on it in the next long range plan update.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yep.
Don?
Aaron, are there other MPOs doing the same thing with adopting the state performance measures?
Yeah, as far as I know, every MPO, well, the other two MPOs in Montana have both agreed to support the statewide targets and are not setting their own locally. And I believe, pretty sure that's how the other two MPOs have from what I know. And I think they're taking a similar approach. So Great Falls is wrapping up their long-range plan update right now, and they've kind of taken a similar approach of having an appendix that addresses, we've established these targets. There hasn't been a lot of time since we established them, and so they'll continue to report and build on that support. So, yeah.
Seems to make good sense, and everyone will be working together toward the same.
I can confirm.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it seems like it makes good sense, and that it's the right approach for us to generate a unified standards.
Okay. Additional questions or discussion? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve amendment number 2.
I'd move that the TPCC approve amendment number 2 to the 2016 LRTP as proposed.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additional discussion or public comment?
Just a clarification, did TTAC modify it?
No.
So as proposed works?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So no further discussion, no public comment. So all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes as well. So next we'll move on to the 2019 UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program.
All right, thanks. So we'll continue. This is a very administrative meeting, and some of our regular plans and programs that we adopt about this time every year. So the UPWP, so this is our annual work plan. So this lays out what the MPO anticipates working on over the next year, how we'll spend our time. Obviously, small, things come up in the interim that we would put some work towards, but generally this is the big picture, what we will be working on and how we're spending our time and money for the next year. We gave kind of a general update of what we were planning to do at the last meeting. Nothing has really changed since then, but I can kind of walk through sort of the big picture elements that we're planning to do for the next year. So as far as general administration and our day-to-day activities, those will stay largely the same. We'll continue to do a lot of our ongoing programs and data collection, including the urban traffic count programs, both motorized and non-motorized. Continue to do UPWP updates, TIP amendments, monitoring long-range plan, working with our partners to ensure that we're moving towards the goals and objectives in that plan. We do have some projects that are changing a little bit. So I believe in the FY18 UPWP, we started working on the Community Transportation Safety Plan update. That work will continue. We've have the consultant hired and on board, and they are starting to work on it. We weren't sure if we would actually have any billing from them before the end of the fiscal year, so we've just included the entire cost of that contract in fiscal year 2019. But you can expect to hear from us fairly soon about the kickoff of that plan. We're also planning to wrap up the pedestrian facilities master plan in the early part of fiscal year 19. We'd initially hoped that we would have it wrapped up by the end of the summer or early fall, but just in terms of staff turnover and other things taking precedence, we're in the process of writing that plan, but wanted to make sure we had some adequate time for public review and final comments. So anticipate having that adopted in the early part of FY19. We also have some funding in the UPWP for some corridor plans. So potentially, depending on what happens with Brooks Street corridor, if that plan requires additional funding, we still have some in the UPWP for that. We've also looked at separating out the transportation model update from the long-range transportation plan, so we can do those as two separate projects, which we think will help start with the model update first. We aren't necessarily locked in with one consultant to manage both of those projects. Gives us a little bit more flexibility, and we can have that model up and running and calibrated and working when we go to kick off the update to the long-range plan. We also plan to start that update to the LRTP probably later in fiscal year 2019, so next summer or early fall, with an anticipation that we would do that update over the course of that year and have it adopted by the end of 2020, which would be essentially our 4-year target for that update. even though it feels like we just finished the last long-range plan. Those 4 years go by fast. I think we got updates from Mountain Line on their work elements, so they'll be wrapping up their strategic planning process. They're working on a facilities master plan that's kicking off soon. They have their bus stop master plan, so we incorporated all of their changes to their anticipated work schedule. We did receive some comments from MDT on the UPWP. I think we've addressed most of those. Many of them were just clarifications about what we were working on, differences in hours and costs and minor administrative things, and just clarifying that we're not actually doing land use planning. We are participating in the transportation side of that, so that we're focused on what are the transportation impacts of growth policy and other land use plans, and providing that transportation expertise to those processes. So I think that's the gist of what's in the plan. I'm happy to answer any questions. And hopefully get this adopted and moving forward.
Do you anticipate using the model in different ways with it being, or do you anticipate more robust use of it other than through just in the LRTP?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, we do have requests periodically for projects. So a good example is the build grant that was submitted by the county. We did some modeling for that project. We do it for other corridor-based studies just to get a sense of what's the regional impact of these kinds of bigger transportation projects. So we were already doing that. We've started conversations with our consultant on getting a sense of what kind of refinements we could make to the model to better integrate land use pieces. Not that we would be managing the land use, but working with our counterparts in long-range planning to work with them to get better, maybe do some land use scenario modeling to see what the transportation impacts would be. Also want to refine some of the non-motorized pieces and how the model considers bike and ped and transit trips, and looking into the future and would those maybe change under different scenarios. And then we've also talked about a lot of other places are starting to use cellular data to help calibrate the model. So there are these big data companies that will sell you, essentially they look at cell phone records to see where people are taking trips and when, and I don't know exactly how all of that works, but it's another data set on top of our traffic counts that we can help calibrate when and where are trips happening and what kind of trips are those. Are they going from residences to commercial, commercial to commercial, those kinds of things. So it'll give us hopefully a little bit more refinement when we calibrate the model. So it's sort of a long answer to that question. But
yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned the additional data source. There's a pretty good trip diary in most people's pockets, and so it's exciting that's exciting and a little creepy that's becoming available.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So we need a motion to approve the UPWP.
I'd move that we approve the 2019 Unified Planning Work Program as proposed.
Okay, thank you. That motion is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any additional committee comment or public comment? Okay, all those in favor of the approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes as well. And our third administrative item is our Transportation Improvement Program, fiscal year 2019 through 2023.
All right. Hi, everyone. Tara Ossendorf with the Missoula MPO. If my PowerPoint will open. There we go. So we're just going to go through a couple of changes since Amendment 4 to the 2018 TIP that we've incorporated into the new 2019 TIP that hopefully we'll have approved today. So. All right, so just like Aaron was mentioning in the LRTP amendment, those performance measures haven't been included in a lot of our documents. So those performance measures have been added to the introduction section on, I believe, page 9 and 10 of the 2019 TIP. We sent out a call for projects through a variety of emails and online messaging and have now received updates from Mountain Line, MDT, as well as Mr. TMA. along with one public comment that addresses the East Missoula Railroad trestle improvements. And so far as the timeline goes, we're hoping that TPCC will adopt the document today and it'll be able to be fully reviewed and approved by the end of September. So changes to CMAQ, no sweeper purchases were made in 2018, so funds were brought forward to 2019. And then that 28,000 at the bottom is just an adjustment for closures. You can see that in red on the screen. STPU funds, that nearly 4 million listed in the Dakota to Mount portion, as you can see there in 2023, was part of the Urban Borrow Program, which was addressed in the 18 TIP Amendment 4, which is intended for possible future use. The availability of that funding will hopefully decrease the number of amendments that we'll have in this upcoming TIP, and any funds that go unused will still remain there. Interstate maintenance, the only adjustment from the 2018 TIP here is that the Grant Creek and I-90 intersection improvement project has some updated costs in 2020. Those are fairly minor. Transportation funds for surface level. We don't have a ton of new projects being added in this TIP, but here are 2 of them. We've got a slide correction project on Pulp Mill Road, as well as an additional bank stabilization project. And it looks like they have totals about $3.5 million and almost $800,000 respectively there. HSIP, there's a new Stevens Orange safety study for about $190,000. And as far as the bridge program goes, you can see that the Higgins Avenue Bridge project reflects some updated costs in 2020, as well as an updated local match there. And then changes for FTA 5339 funding, the buses and bus stop amenities line reflects an update for 2023 costs of about $1 million. So that is it, and the staff recommendation is that the 2019 TIP be approved. So pending any further questions, we'll hand it back over to you guys.
Thank you, Tara. Questions from anyone? Commissioner.
Would build be entered in here separately in future years, or are we still calling it Tiger into the future? Or should we be calling it build?
Oh, it'll be billed.
Okay.
Yep. That's one comment I'll actually write on there.
And then I had a question about the Lolo East Missoula safety improvement. Is that the one where we wanted access looked at, or is that a separate? That's not an HSIP? Okay. I saw the centerline rumble strips, and I wanted to make sure the project hadn't shifted again. Thanks.
So there is a line item for Tiger in here still on page 30, and so, but there's no projects listed in that, so I don't know if that needs to be updated at this time, or if it's just for, obviously there would still be Tiger funds available to be expended if we had any, so if it needs to stay in here blank, that is fine too.
Yeah, and if not, that would be able to go through as an administrative modification, so.
Okay. Yeah. Shane.
Back to your first slide, you had a comment from somebody in the public about the East Missoula Railroad. I'm just curious, what was the comment?
That might be something, Aaron, you had that email, so I'll have you answer their question.
Yeah, so when we put out the call for projects, there was an individual who I believe lives in the Easy Street area and was just, that's on his radar of something that should be fixed, as it is probably for all of us. And he was, mostly inquiring about whether that's something that could be included in the TIP as part of that call for projects. So we talked about it a little bit. It also happened to occur when MRL was working on that railroad truss, adding in the second track. And so I think we received a number of comments or questions on whether something could be done during that project. And unfortunately, there's no funding. So, yeah.
Don?
This might be a question for Aaron too, but one of the things every time I review the tip, I see the Russell Street, how much of it sort of consumes, and I just wanted to hear a quick update on how things are going and whether you feel like we're on target in terms of money and schedule.
Yeah, I think Shane can jump in too. My understanding is that the project is on schedule. Things are proceeding more or less the way they anticipated. The Milwaukee Trail underpass half of it is mostly done, and I don't know if they've switched the road over yet, but I know that's in the next couple of weeks. With the hope that that trail piece will be open in the fall, October, November. I think November is the actual deadline. Oh, maybe Shane has an update on that.
Yeah, we just met this morning, so I would tell you that I'm not super confident we're going to have the Milwaukee open this year. So it may be next spring. So
that's too bad.
It is.
But yeah, and as far as costs go, I think most of it is proceeding. There's nothing really significant. The one piece that might affect it is on the pedestrian portion of the bridge. The change in the barrier between the pedestrian space and the vehicular lane is more of an open steel. I don't know what the actual term for that is, but there's some interest in either getting a rail on the inside. So the worry is that there's these vertical beams and that it could be, something you'd catch your handlebars on, and it is a shared use path rather than a separate bike lane and pedestrian space. So that might add cost to add in that bump rail on the pedestrian side of it. But we're continuing to look at different options, I think, on how to address that.
Yeah.
And the only significant change order that I'm aware of was for additional excavation and additional fill material, and that was executed pretty early on in the project.
Yeah.
And my understanding, and Shane, you probably know a lot more about this, but my understanding is that that hasn't been utilized as much as anticipated.
Yeah, I think when we originally discussed it, there was concern that the material that was there for the entire corridor may not be sufficient for the surfacing thicknesses we had out there, and so we were going to just change order in some material that had better quality. And what we're finding is the material that's out there is in pretty good shape, and so it's minimal locations where we're having to do that dig out replacement. So,
thanks. Any additional questions? Or a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion that we approve the FY 2019 to 2023 Transportation Improvement Program as proposed.
Okay, the motion is in order. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any additional discussion from the committee? Or any public comment? All right, so on the motion to approve, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, that motion passes as well. So that's it. We'll do any announcements or closing comments, and then we'll adjourn. Aaron, do you have anything? Or?
Yeah, I have a couple. Wanted to mention that we have a lot of events coming up in the near future with our division, particularly with Missoula in Motion. So for those of you who don't know, we've been doing bike valet at a lot of events. So that's where we set up essentially a space. We staff it with volunteers, and people can drop off their bikes and leave them, come back, and get them at a later time. And we watch those. It's been fairly successful. We did it at the fairgrounds. We did it in partnership with ASUM at the Pearl Jam concert. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but there were over 300 people who utilized that bike valet. And I think we cleared close to over 200 bikes in like 10 or 12 minutes in terms of getting them back to people at the end of the show. So it's a fairly efficient, worthwhile project, providing that, just showing people the benefits of biking to those events and getting vehicles off the roads, or not having to park around the fairgrounds or the university or whatever. We have a couple other bike valet events coming up. We're going to do it at River City Roots. So we're looking for volunteers to help with that, because we do have to staff it the entire time the event is open. So we just need a few volunteers, particularly on Saturday, I believe, if anyone's interested. We also have our bike ped counts coming up in the beginning of September, so we're, again, always looking for volunteers to help out. This is a year where we're collecting surveys, so we need a few extra volunteers to be out surveying people biking and walking. It's pretty easy. People are usually pretty interested to do it, surprisingly. Even if they're biking, I've always had really good luck, asking people to stop, and they will, surprisingly. I think they're just really excited to give their input on biking and walking in Missoula. And then we have Sunday Streets coming up on September 9th. So we are also looking for volunteers for that. So we have a lot of volunteer opportunities if people are interested in transportation-related events, or if you can pass those along to your networks of individuals who might be interested. So yeah, the only other update I think I have is that for those who haven't met Michael, he's our new planner that we hired. He started beginning of August. So we're excited to have him on and getting up to speed and starting to work on some of our projects. And he came from Portland and went to Portland State University, and I think will be a great team person to have on our staff. Thanks.
Where do the volunteers go to if they want to volunteer?
We have some online sign-up forms. You could go, for Sunday Streets, you could go to Missoula in Motion's website, which is missoulainmotion.org or .com. I can never remember which one that is. Or you can go to the MPO website, and I believe we have a piece up there for the bike ped counts. So either one of those websites would be the easiest place. Yeah, or email Tara.
Email who, I'm sorry?
Or feel free to email me as well.
Yeah, Tara can, if you email her about the bike ped counts, or you could email Missoula in Motion.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other announcements or comments from anyone? Okay. Well, we will adjourn 61 minutes early.
Your comment about that. He said it wasn't clear how they got that data. People traveling, it's all too clear how they get that data.